I have got a very small stack of books to share today since this is the 5th Tuesday of the month. DC's only got a handful of books out. 2 of them were Batman related. Both of them are in continuity, which means I will be reviewing both of them for you guys. And those titles are Shadow War Omega, number 1. This is the conclusion of the Shadow War storyline, so even though it's issue 1, obviously this is like part 8 or whatever. And then the other book, which I'm actually pretty curious about, is the Batman 2022 Annual. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago that we got the 2021 Annual, and that was Ghostmaker focused. It was the conclusion of a set of backup stories from Batman that was just sort of Ghostmaker on a solo mission. Now circumstances have changed. Ghostmaker is head of Batman Incorporated, and that's kind of what this book is going to be about. I assume building up to some kind of Batman Incorporated book or Batman Incorporated backup. I don't know if anything's been announced yet, but leafing through this, it looks like it is very Batman Inc. focused and definitely seems like it's going to be setting something up. So I'm actually pretty curious to give this one a read and see how it goes. Ghostmaker is not one of my favorite characters. I've made that known in the past. But that said, I'm going to go into this with an open mind, and I'll give you my thoughts on this, as well as Shadow War Omega in just a moment, once I've had a chance to give them a read and let you guys know what happened this week in Batman. Alright, so I have had a chance to read through my 2 Batman books for the week, and I'm going to review these in the order that I read them. We're going to kick things off with the Batman 2022 Annual. As I said, this is a Batman Incorporated story. You get a little bit of a backstory with Batman and Ghostmaker, some early adventures that they had. We also dig into the first time Ghostmaker was asked to be in charge of Batman Inc., as well as getting to see him actually take charge and see Batman kind of hand over the reins and see how the team reacted to all of that. For me, the first half of this book was really the highlight because it was interesting seeing how everybody kind of played off of each other, what the reactions were. Ghostmaker has a tendency to rub people the wrong way, including me, by the way, but also other members of the team because he's just kind of a blowhard, right? And so they call that out in this book, and it's kind of nice seeing everybody reacting to it and coming to terms with the fact that this is the decision that Batman has made. Once we get out of that, we get into a mission where it's basically Lex Luthor cleanup. Ghostmaker has gotten a tip that some of Lex Luthor's experiments when he was running Batman Incorporated had kind of gone awry, and now it's up to Ghostmaker and company to clean up the mess. And the second half of this book just didn't read nearly as well to me, mainly because Ghostmaker was really annoying. There's really no other way to put it. Like, they go into this situation that was created by Batman Incorporated, and then they get, like, really pissed off when everybody calls them out on it. And are like, well, we're here to fix it, so why don't you thank us? Like, that kind of a thing. And it's like, eh. And that really, like, rubbed me the wrong way. Now, there is a twist at the end that kind of justifies some of it, but it feels kind of contrived because how often do we see in the news where it's like, you know, we as the United States get involved in a conflict because we're going to make things better, we make things worse, and then we come back later, fix our problem that we created, and then wonder why everybody's mad at us, right? And so in this, there's a convenient explanation as to why it wasn't actually our fault, and so everybody kind of gets off scot-free, and it just kind of read a little bit far-fetched. What I will say about the second half of this story is we get the introduction of a new member of Batman Incorporated, which is this Grey Wolf character who at first seems to be the villain, but it's actually a springboard to put him on the team. Turns out he's one of the good guys. I liked this character, and I'm curious to see what they can do with it. And then, as I suspected, once you get to the end of this title, we have a tease for Batman Incorporated number 1, which is set to be on sale sometime this fall. So, I don't know, like, I can't decide if I'm excited about a new Batman Incorporated book. I was really excited when they brought Batman Incorporated kind of back into the universe when the Abyss storyline was getting rolling. Like, I really liked that idea. I also really liked the idea of Lex Luthor actually running Batman Incorporated. I thought they could kind of do a lot with that. There's a lot of potential. But we kind of skipped right over that. Like, that was the hook. But then we kind of got a subversion where, you know, all the interesting storytelling beats that could have come from that are all going to kind of come from flashbacks like we get in this, as opposed to being what the actual story's about. And so what we're left with is, again, Ghostmaker running Batman Incorporated, which I just don't quite get it. And it seems like the writers kind of know that because there's a lot of dialogue in this about who is Ghostmaker, like why is he running this team? Like this is ridiculous. And as a reader, I agree. Like yes, it is ridiculous. Like why is Ghostmaker the one running this team? Why are we putting Clown Hunter as Ghostmaker's prodigy? Like it just seems like a catch-all for a lot of different characters that they don't know what to do with. And maybe that's what my issue is. I'm still not entirely sure, but this book didn't leave me like salivating for a new Batman Incorporated book. It mostly made me curious to go back and reread some of the older Batman Inc. because while that era of Batman was never really my favorite, I thought it had a lot of interesting ideas and they went a lot of interesting directions with it. Grant Morrison has a way of, taking some of the sillier elements of the DC universe and sort of putting them front and center and making you as a reader kind of grapple with it directly, but not necessarily take it seriously. And I think that this is trying to, take some of these more radical Batman offshoot character concepts and say you should really take these characters more seriously. I don't feel like Grant Morrison ever really did that. He treated them in a serious way, but he didn't, conform them to typical Batman universe storytelling. And that's kind of what Batman 2022's annual seems to sort of be promising. I think putting Ghostmaker at the head of that is only going to exacerbate that as an issue. It's interesting because DC's doing a lot with Grant Morrison concepts right now. Multiversity is like front and center in the DC universe right now. Justice League Incarnate and all this other stuff. Such a big footprint from what Grant Morrison was doing with the DC universe basically 10 years ago. Seems to be what they are really running after. And the thing about Grant Morrison, love him or hate him, whatever it is, it's not replicable, I don't think. I just don't see other writers being able to hit that tone that he can hit. It's just a very unique voice in comics, and he can tell stories that nobody else can. So, valiant effort. We'll see how it turns out. I'm honestly pretty skeptical. So then that just leaves one other book I read this week, which of course was Shadow War Omega issue number 1. This would probably be my pick of the week. It didn't actually blow me away, which is disappointing just because this series had such a strong start. And it's not that this is bad. It's just, like I said last week, we've now gotten into a bunch of like DC bookkeeping kind of in a way. We're paying off what happened with Geoforce. We're paying off a bunch of stuff with Brian Michael Bendis and Leviathan and Checkmate and all this other stuff that I just wasn't on board for. I wasn't reading. The only thing I was reading when this stuff was coming out was the main Batman title. And it wasn't really until right before Infinite Frontier launched that I was even catching up on that huge run of Tom King. So all of this stuff is very foreign to me. And so the impact that it has is just going to be less for me than someone else who's been super invested in what DC's been doing over the last 5 years. I will say it was fun seeing Geoforce in this. I couldn't remember the last time I had read something with Geoforce. And then once he started using his powers and doing stuff, I kind of started remembering some things that I had read in the past. So that was definitely a pleasant addition. I liked that a lot. And then there is a good emotional climax to this book. Where, Batman has to trust Robin. They've well and truly reconciled their relationship by the end of this, which I think is great. And much like I often say about Joshua Williamson and his writing on Robin, he's found a way to truly grow this character and take him to another place rather than just grim, dark, grandson of Ra's al Ghul, that many other writers have kind of stuck him in that box and not been able to figure out how to get him out. So it's great to see this character developing more fully, and ultimately that's my main takeaway in this story. Despite all the other things happening, that I think was probably the ultimate highlight of the series. Obviously Ra's al Ghul dying and the fallout of the League of Shadows turning themselves over to the authorities. We do get some more info about that towards the end of this book that I won't spoil. The death or supposed death of Deathstroke. All jaw-dropping moments in this series that made for a really fun ride. But really, I think the ultimate legacy of this series is going to hinge more on what happened between Batman and Robin and how they kind of finally found a way to kind of reconcile some things over a period. And at the end, we have them, going across the rooftops together with the Batman and Robin logo, of course, from about 10 years ago now when Grant Morrison launched that series. Just a really welcome endpoint for this that left me really excited to see what happens in Robin 15. So overall, this series did its job, and definitely one of the better DC crossover events because all the books that crossed over in this had a relevant part to play in the actual event. This isn't an event that sets up 1,000 other things in 1,000 other books like Fear State was doing. And so I just would like to say good job, DC. Keep these types of crossovers coming. This is much more what I want to see. Even if the ending left me a little bit flat, I don't think it detracts from the quality of editorial's work in bringing all these books together and making it, a focused work of fiction that you can actually read from beginning to end, and it makes sense, and it makes sense in the books that it's being put in. Now, there is a coda at the end of this book that I'm not going to spoil. It does have a pretty big moment that is very intriguing, and it also does have tie-ins to Dark Crisis. So if you're reading Dark Crisis, this might be a title worth kind of checking out. It's a pretty quick read, just kind of a lot of fighting, a lot of sort of emotional climax without a lot of talking. So you'll get through it fairly quick, and then the coda may be really important for down the road, but I'm not going to be reading Dark Crisis until after it's in trade, so I guess you guys can let me know just how important it was, but just so you know it's in here in case you need to pick this up and don't know it. Alright, so that pretty much wraps me up for this week's Batman books. Really small week, even though they were oversized books. I got through them fairly quickly, especially because Omega was a lot of splash pages, a lot of action, not a lot of dialogue. Did you pick up either of these books? I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments. If you're reading Dark Crisis and want to clue me in on anything, feel free to leave a comment below on that as well. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I hope you guys have a great week in comics, and thanks for watching this video. Take care.